The Fake Baseball Podcast is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It is also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Underdog Fantasy is the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports. Underdog Fantasy lets you draft a fantasy dream team in just minutes. Sign up with promo code FAKEBASEBALL to claim your special pick plus first time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. Earn more than bragging rights. Double your play, double your fun. Sign up with promo code FAKEBASEBALL to claim your special pick plus first time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. Must be 18 and over, 21 and over in select states. And present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call 24/7-HOPE-LINE at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. What is up, everybody? It is the Tuesday episode 53 of the Fake Baseball Podcast. As always, it is Blake Meyer here with my man Dylan Lydell, who is finally back from his fun little Memorial Day weekend trip. And with us today is a very special guest. I can honestly say he's my favorite baseball content creator out there. It is Bailey, Mr. Foolish Baseball himself. Bailey, how are you doing today, dude?
I'm doing well. I'm extremely flattered by that label of favorite baseball content creator. I'll try to live up to it for the next 45 minutes or so.
I mean, it's not going to be that difficult to live up to it. I can honestly say I have been watching your stuff for years. We'll get into your content that you make, but I did go to a Tacoma Rainiers game a few weeks ago, and I saw a player playing for the El Paso Chihuahuas, and immediately was reminded of one of your old videos that I will bring up today. But Dylan, I got to ask you two real quick. How are you doing? I know you were gone all weekend. I did the last two episodes solo.
Yeah, man. You held the ship down. You did a great job. Turned out great. Yeah, just had a tournament, helped coach out this weekend, and then Monday just took the time, threw some barbecue on the grill, and just kind of hung out for one day. Get my feet back underneath me. Was a long weekend, but yeah, ready to hop back into it.
Yeah, make sure you guys go check out those episodes. Last Thursday's episode, I was on here with Jeff Erickson of RotoWire and SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. And then yesterday, I was on here with somebody that Bailey knows, Mr. Jolly Olive. He told me that this should be a fun episode. He came and hung out with me yesterday. He may or may not have given me some insight into things to ask you about, but we won't go there. But I want to get right into it. So you have two YouTube channels. First would be Foolish Baseball, and then the other one would be Foolish Bailey. Right out of the gate, I want to ask you about your out of the park baseball playthrough. I've been watching the videos of it, so I got to ask you right out of the gate, how long have you been playing out of the park baseball first? And if you could give the listeners a little tidbit of what out of the park baseball is.
Yeah, out of the park baseball is what I would describe as spreadsheet baseball. It is a video game for your PC, and it is not like MLB The Show in the sense that you are, play acting as a professional baseball player. Rather, you are playing the role of a GM/field manager. And so you are, making the transactions and moves necessary to simulate your way through a successful baseball season. And it's quite in depth. And even for, I think, the more seasoned baseball fans, just through playing this game, you will learn a lot about how the business side of baseball works. You may not know about the Rule 5 draft. You may not know exactly how arbitration works. You may not know how the waiver wire functions. You might not know how options work. But when you play this game, you will. And I've been playing it for, probably 7 years now. And the origin story of my channel, of me doing baseball on YouTube, is Out of the Park Baseball. That is how I started. If you go on the Foolish Baseball channel and you sort by the oldest videos, they will all be Out of the Park Baseball. So that's kind of how I got my start and how I cultivated my initial audience of, for lack of a better term, baseball nerds, people who love the minutia of baseball. And eventually I transitioned from that to the type of video I make now on my main channel, which is, 15-minute video essay, probably dealing with something, sabermetric or analytical in nature. But yeah, on my second channel now, which you alluded to, Foolish Bailey, I am playing through out of the park baseball. I'm returning to my roots, and I'm trying to rebuild the Oakland A's. It has not gone great. I think so far I'm at least for those
It's a tough hill to climb right there,
for the episodes that have been published. I think I'm 4 seasons in, and I haven't had a winning season yet. And at the big league level, we don't seem to be much better or worse than when I took over. And the hope is that maybe the farm system is a lot better, but we'll just have to see. But that's what I've got going on Foolish Bailey. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
It's really fun to watch. You as a baseball fan watching you can actually learn a ton, like you said, about the game of baseball just from watching you play it.
Yeah, it's again.
I wanted to ask you though. I took some notes. I mean, I've been paying attention, but so in this playthrough, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, ask your question about this playthrough.
Oh, you're fine. Oh, I was going to say, one of the very first things you did, I like that you went through and you broke down the stats by the players, how good they were, and you talked about how crucial it was to have defense up the middle, and you traded away Estieri Ruiz for Kyle Isbell. We're going to talk about this as if we're GMs, or as if you're a GM. You think...
I've got a cat situation, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Is this the first time for you guys?
I'm just waiting for him to try and leave.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. I boot mine out the door before we.
Yeah, that's what I should have done. Oh,
she's always hanging out by my windowsill.
Yeah,
I get
his
it. She's
tail
out the
made
room.
it on.
But then I got the bulldog situation down by my feet. You may hear him going off a little.
Yeah, I have a dog situation that has not revealed itself yet, but very well could in the next, before this podcast is over. So I apologize.
Honorary guests at all times. You gotta love it.
Yes. So if anyone was watching on the live stream, they're just distracted. I was trying to throw the cat off the desk, but yeah, defense up the middle is particularly important in out of the park baseball, as I was saying, and so I prioritize trading for center field defense, and one of my best moves so far has been acquiring Kyle Isbell, who I then later flipped, but then I think also got pretty good return on the flip as well. So we'll just have to see how that turns out.
Do you have a favorite trade that you've made so far in this playthrough?
Ooh, I think the most interesting one has been, and it's certainly not a favorite, but the most interesting one has been, I was using Mason Miller out of the pen as the Oakland A's are in real life, and it found plenty of success. But I did, and this was again with the Royals, I traded him for Pasquantino, and it's kind of been a win-win for both because the Royals have had some success using him out of the rotation, which is something I probably wouldn't have done. But then Pasquantino's been, since I traded for him, like the best, most consistent hitter, like a leadoff guy. So that's just been kind of fun to watch unfold because like you could see that happening. You could see, the A's trading Mason Miller at some point this year would take a king's ransom to do it just because of the amount of control he has. But you could see a team trading for him and even trying him out of the rotation. And it would be kind of like an interesting experiment because that's what he was supposed to be. He came up in the majors last year and was in the rotation and got hurt, and they've opted to use him as out of the bullpen. I think it's been a good decision because he's been the best reliever in baseball.
Yeah, Mariners fans were really upset when they got diced up by him as a starter, and it turns out he's like one of the most electric arms in baseball. So
right,
trying to jump the ship there a little too early.
To bring it to real life baseball real quick, since you mentioned Mason Miller, do you think Mason Miller gets traded this year by the deadline?
I don't, because I think how Oakland will conduct themselves and how, teams that are lower budget and have to do roster trade would conduct themselves is he wouldn't be seen as all that movable until he were to hit his ARB years. Like you're trading for so many years of control. If you were to able to trade for Mason Miller, that'd be such a steep price to ask because I can't even think of a deal that's been comparable to what trading Mason Miller right now would be like. Even Edwin Diaz had a couple years of service time. That's the closest thing, but even he was, farther along the line than Mason Miller is right now. So
that's just the reliever thing, or is that just? I guess that's my question. Is that just because he's a reliever? It just might be too steep of a tag to go for that, or do you try to get relievers closer to their arbitration? Is that the thing?
Well, I just think it's anybody. I think if you're trading for a player who, isn't going to be a free agent for like 5 more seasons, like that's going to come with a pretty steep price no matter what.
I hear you. That makes sense.
All right, and then to transition back into out of the park baseball real quick, because I am enamored by this. I am the type of person that played MLB The Show back in the day on my PSP strictly to play franchise mode and just to simulate, like it was like 2009 and I'd simulate to the year 2030. So the fact that I can be an adult now and play this on my computer and be like I'm going to sit in here with like whatever team I'll probably be the Mariners. I'll sit in here with my Mariners hat on, my Mariners gear on, and I'm going to be Jerry DePoto. Yeah. So how many years do you plan to go with this playthrough? And then are you just going to run it back with the new one, or is this one just kind of going until you get bored?
Yeah, I would say this one is going, and it's a great deadline. I think it's a deadline that many GMs have faced in their actual tenures. I'm going to keep going until I make the playoffs or get fired. Those are pretty much, those are the two roads, the two directions I could go with this. Initially when I started, I thought, I'll go probably, 5 seasons or something like that. I think the first Out of the Park series I did way back in the day went 5 seasons. And as of right now, I have recorded those 5 seasons and I want to keep going. I want to keep playing. Maybe I'll do 5 more. So I think we're looking at either get fired, make playoffs, or 10 seasons. Like it's some combination of those things will get me to the end of this series, because it has taken over my second channel now. And I have other things that I would like to do. But I'm just loving playing Out of the Park right now. It's the most fun I've had playing the game in years. And I think it's the best iteration of the game we've seen in years. So they don't sponsor me. I wish I could say, go buy it with my code and get 20% off. I don't have any of that. I'm just like, that's just me saying it's a great game and you should check it out.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm losing
froze.
Dylan. Are you?
Oh,
okay.
There we go. I'm
Yeah.
back. I apologize.
Yeah, there you go.
Growing up, did the same thing
You're
on
What were you
MLB,
saying,
like
Dylan?
Blake said. Yeah, I mean, it's just really cool because I had never heard about this game before up until a few days ago, and it's definitely a lot more in depth, like you were saying, compared to like Madden or MLB The Show. It's really cool, and just for like the big nerds like us to actually break it down into the small details, stuff like we wish we can actually get our hands dirty and do, but the sim is, I guess, good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, this is a game for unathletic people, in the sense that when you were growing up, you thought, you looked at some of the great baseball players and thought, maybe I'll be the shortstop for the Yankees someday or something like that, because you were watching Jeter. And now you've realized you're not going to do that, but you could at least, LARP as
Right.
a GM or as anyone who works in a front office and wears a quarter zip jacket for a living.
Right. Yeah.
It's a reality for everybody out there now. But moving on from Out of the Park, actually, first of all, Out of the Park, sponsor Bailey, please. If there's anybody that deserves it, I think it's Bailey. So sponsor Bailey.
Yeah, I could sell your
but then
game,
moving
guys.
on
Like I just did it.
Yeah,
True.
you did. I'm going to clip this. I'm going to put it out there. We'll send it to headquarters. I'll do everything I can to make this a reality. But moving on to baseball bits. I'm telling you right now, I've been watching baseball bits for years, and I've been waiting for a chance to talk to you about baseball bits. So the person that I saw that play for the El Paso Chihuahuas a couple weeks ago was Tim LaCastro. I'm just going to start with that. It's been 4 years since the Why Tim LaCastro should be your favorite Weird Player video. How do you come up with episodes like that? Like, what makes you sit at home and think, who I should really make a video about? Tim LaCastro. Like, how do you get to that point, and then how does that then turn into a baseball bits video?
It's an interest in outliers. That is how I would summarize it. I might open up a stat leaderboard and try to figure out who is the best at something or who is the worst at something, and then the ideas tend to follow. So with Tim LaCastro, for example, he had a couple things he was an outlier at. He was an outlier at getting hit by pitches, and he was an outlier in terms of his sprint speed because he was, at the time, according to StatCast, the fastest man in baseball. So those two outliers made for a pretty interesting player. And I think that has kind of followed me. Like, one of my most recent baseball bits from this year is about Adam Dunn, and it's about Adam Dunn's outlier defense. This was a guy who was an outlier in a lot of ways, like, in any sort of 3 true outcome stuff. I think that's been covered a fair amount on YouTube, but his defense. And often it's not just talking about a player, but it's using that player to further extrapolate on a baseball concept. And that concept, in the case of the Adam Dunn video, was explaining exactly how advanced defensive metrics like defensive runs saved or StatCast outs above average like actually work, and how they could be calculated, and some of their strengths and limitations. And so that's it's not just about the player. Sometimes it's about using the player as a jumping off point to describe a larger baseball trend or topic.
I love that. And then from conception until the video is done, how long does it typically take you to make a baseball bits video?
Yeah, I would say probably, if I were to work on it every single day, which I don't, because I might, for example, be doing Foolish Bailey stuff, or I might be doing Patreon stuff, or I might be in the weeds of my out of the park baseball save. I would say if I were to work on it every day, I could probably do it in 2.5 to 3 weeks. And that's because it kind of breaks down into 3 distinct phases for me. So the first phase is going to be writing or research and writing. So I'm going to do all the research I need to do, and then I'm going to do an outline, and then I'm going to write the script. And that's the first phase. And that's probably going to take, 5 or 6 days. And then the second phase is what I would call like sort of asset creation and collection. So this is when I create all the stat graphics you see in the video. This will be when I download all the clips necessary. This will be when I create the pixel art you see in the video. This will be when I record the voiceover, and that could be another, 5 or 6 days. And then the third step is the editing. I have all the things I need to make the video. I throw all that into the video editor, and then that's the part that is just kind of maddening for me. That is the one thing that, because I do it, everything you see on the channel is me. I do it all myself, basically.
It's crazy work, man. It's so
thank you very much.
Wow.
But it's that
It's so clean.
the editing is the one thing that I sometimes wish I could outsource or hand off to somebody else. But it's still just me doing that, and that's the part where I start to go a little crazy, and I'll watch, like, you can watch the video preview, and I'll watch it at that point, and I'll be like, this stinks, and then I'll publish it, and then I'll watch it again, and I'll be like, actually, no, this is great, I'm a genius. And then it'll oscillate back and forth between those feelings for the next week or so. But yeah, if I work on it every day, which I don't, I can pump one out in about 2.5 to 3 weeks.
That's impressive as hell. I have been working under the understanding that you had like some kind of graphics guy or something to help you with this. What kind of background did you have in all of this before you started doing it, or did you just self-teach yourself how to make all these pixel art graphics and all that other stuff?
Yeah, most of it's self-taught. In fact, with regards to the pixel art, you can go back to my earlier videos and see a lot of progress in terms of the pixel art. Like, I'm not an artist. I'm not a visual artist. I don't have an artistic background, but this is something I've kind of learned to do, but kind of by sheer brute force. The video editing, again, I guess self-taught would be the word to describe it. I've been editing video, since I was probably like 13. So I've been editing video like 15 years, I always had an interest in that. It just wasn't always, being a YouTuber or videos about baseball, for example. So that's something that I've kind of always done. And then I've always been a baseball fan. I can't remember a time in my life where I wasn't a baseball fan. I grew up in a baseball fan household. So yeah, it's kind of like the channel for me is a marriage of sort of disparate skills that I've had, that I didn't really combine until I was, out of college and looking for a hobby,
That makes total sense then. Because I have been doing, not to the level that you do all of this, but I did no podcast or video stuff before 2 years ago, and in that time I've had to teach myself to edit audio, edit video. I'm working on graphics. It's not that great, but we're getting there. I'm trying to teach myself by brute force too, and it's a labor of love that takes a considerable amount of time to see somebody like yourself that is already at like that high of a level at it. I'm very impressed. So and then going back to the videos, I know I mentioned the Tim LaCastro video. You had the one recently about Ricky Karcher. How like did that game just randomly stick in your head, or his appearance just randomly stick in your head, or is that once again just kind of the outlier thing that did that? Because that was a more recent game that happened in. I didn't even know that was a thing, and you somehow had the full breakdown on his wild first appearance in Major League Baseball. So was that something you watched happen and just thought, I got to make a video on that? Or is it something you kind of fell into and were like, that would be an interesting topic for a video?
Yeah, I wish I could say I stumbled across it. That's not how it happened. I just happened to be watching the game on MLB TV and just could not believe my eyes at the brilliance of Ricky Karcher's so far one outing in Major League Baseball so far. And then I think I would periodically check on him in the months that followed to see, could he get called back up, or has he been back up? And this year, now I know that he's pitching in Arizona's system. And the fact that we have now been almost a calendar year since his first and so far only major league appearance kind of made me think, all right, I want to do one about this guy, Ricky Karcher, just because it's a really interesting outing. And the stat that really fascinated me from it that when I was researching, I came up with was it was pitchers. I would describe them as wild minor league pitchers. The search specifically was for minor league pitchers with at least a 20% strikeout rate and 20% walk rate in their minor league careers. And I think I unearthed 12 of them maybe from the last 20 years or so. And I think it was actually 20 pitchers. And it's like 4 of them had made it to AA, and only one of them had made it to the majors. And that one was Ricky Karcher. So it's just kind of a good illustration of, you've seen wild pitchers before in Major League Baseball. You've seen a guy go out and have an outing where it seems like he can't find the strike zone, but that this guy was, to go back to what I was saying about LaCastro, an outlier in that regard.
Mm-hmm. And it made for a really interesting video to see all that happen. Because again, I had no idea that outing happened, and it was, I don't want to say must watch TV, but to see somebody be that wildly ineffective but still be effective at the same time was bordering. It was like borderline. For you to make a video about it, it made my day. Again, I'm trying not to gush over your baseball bits videos, but I think they are one of the best ways for people that are. I mean, I'm a stat head. I literally get paid to write about baseball and make baseball content, and I get excited when I see the notification that there's a new Foolish Baseball video out there. So if you guys have not checked those out, please go check those out on YouTube. And for those of you that are watching right now, I'm going to run this real quick.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was just about to say, I missed that Felix one from a few years back. That one was so good. So good.
Yeah. And that's a good example of just how even, I think just the culture around how people view certain stats has changed, because that was one of those years that, I mean, for fantasy purposes, like you guys will care about the pitcher win, but I don't, not in my normal,
it's not the way to judge it,
baseball
man.
life.
It's not the way to go. I completely agree that. Yeah. And I guess at the time I had not realized that Felix was kind of the one that, broke that ground for like even DeGrom and stuff too. That was really cool.
Definitely. And also I will point out Greinke a couple years earlier had like I'm guessing he was like 16 and 11 and it was him versus like 20 game winners. So that was also an example, but Felix was
crazy how those numbers look
14 and 12 or whatever. So that was sub 15 wins and winning a Cy Young.
Yeah. That one was awesome.
Yeah, we're team quality star over here. All right, I'm going to run this ad real quick and we'll be right back. We're back, baby. We made it back. So, outside of making baseball content, I gotta ask, what types of non-baseball related things are you into? Your whole life can't revolve around baseball. Like when you shut your baseball brain off, what is it that you enjoy doing?
My whole life can't revolve around baseball. This is news to me.
That hurt to say, actually. That hurt, actually.
Yeah, did that hurt to admit that your whole life can't revolve around baseball?
Yeah.
Let's see. I enjoy comedy. I think that shows through. Like before I was a YouTuber, I would even dabble with the occasional like stand-up comedy open mic routine, at like local bars or
Ooh.
whatever. Now that I have an audience that is, captive and must deal with my sense of humor, regardless of whether it's good or not, I don't really feel the need to do that anymore, to subject that upon strangers. I'll rather subject that upon fans of baseball everywhere. But that's definitely one. I know I enjoy, watching stand-up comedy specials, for example. I have an interest in like political philosophy. I read a decent amount of like political philosophy. Like most of the books I read are nonfiction. So I read a lot of that and like history. That's interesting to me. And then I also just kind of pace around. Like I like to pace around the woods, basically. Some would call that hiking, but for me it's more of a mental thing than physical exertion. Just like sometimes you see a reliever blow a save, right? And you just think, I need to walk in the woods for the next 30 minutes, having witnessed that. And that's kind of how I deal with the struggles of everyday life. I just kind of pace around. I enjoy sitting. I enjoy pacing. I hate standing. Standing still sucks. I will take sitting, and I will take pacing and moving around over standing any day.
I might need to go start pacing in the woods after every time I see Scott Service manage a Seattle Mariners baseball game, because that might make me like calm down a little bit. I'd never even considered that, and I should do that. We got some pretty cool.
I'm just going to go take a walk in the woods
out here in Washington.
Yeah, every time he brings out Trenton Thornton, man.
Well, it's great because like if you, I don't know exactly where you guys are based, but if you're in the Pacific Northwest, there are great pacing woods all around you, I'm sure.
Right up my hill, man. There's a nice little trail I take my dogs on. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Let me see. I can see some right out the window. Man, we were, not to sidebar, but we were going to go camping this weekend. I checked, and wouldn't you know it, it's going to rain all weekend in Washington. That's crazy. So I can't do that. But moving on to one other thing I wanted to talk to you about, Bailey. Before the season, you put out a video for 5 hitters that you liked for this season, and then 5 pitchers that you like for this season. I noticed somebody in each video that are very near and dear to this podcast heart. I want to start with the hitter, and that would be Maikel Garcia. You were a big fan of Maikel Garcia coming into the season, as were we. So I want to ask you, what really drew you to liking Maikel Garcia coming into the season? What did you see that you liked? And how are you feeling about him right now? I know he started hot, slowed down, been a little hot lately again. So where are you at, Maikel Garcia?
Still love him. I think with Maikel Garcia, what I was seeing was basically with regards to some of his underlying power metrics and his actual, home run total, which was quite minuscule last year, that something had to give is how I describe it. There are players where there is, a disconnect between what they are expected to be doing and what they're actually doing. And at some point, something's got to give. With Maikel Garcia, it was interesting. It was he proved he could hit the ball hard last year. His average exit velocity was good. He proved he could even hit the ball at optimal launch angles. His sweet spot percentage was pretty good last year as well. But he wasn't really doing both, and so he wasn't really getting barrels, and so he wasn't really getting home runs. So he only hit, in 123 games last year, he had 4 home runs. This year, through his first 53 games played, he has 5. So he's already reached his, home run total from last year in less than half the time, and that's exciting. One reason I really liked Garcia, and there are a couple reasons. The one that's fantasy relevant is that he also stole bases last year. So last year he was 23 for 30. This year he's a perfect 13 for 13. So he could honestly pace for 30 35 steals by the time the season is over. We'll just have to see. But so he's a good base stealer, and the one that's not fantasy relevant but is very true actual baseball value, real life relevant, is that he's a great defender at third base. And it's been fun to watch because he came up through the minors as a shortstop, and obviously Bobby Witt Jr. is there, but they've kicked him over to third base. Last year was his first time playing third as a professional, and he was immediately brilliant. He was immediately, one of the best defensive third basemen in the American League. And I think this year he's probably got a good shot to win a Gold Glove over there. We'll just have to see how he does against some of the competition. But I mean, when you combine a guy who thus far has been about an average bat with great base stealing efficiency, and a great glove, like he's going to be a really impactful, valuable players for the Royals. I'm just curious to see if there's more to the bat than being a league average hitter, because if he can get just above that threshold, and maybe he's a 110 OPS plus or a 115 OPS plus, then he's really going to be valuable, and he's going to be even more relevant to fantasy players because he's going to get more runs, more RBI, or whatever category you're chasing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, coming into this season, for me, physically their statures are very different, so it's kind of a weird comparison in that sense. But he reminded me of like 2022 Yandy Diaz, hitting the ball really hard, but not really translating to a ton of home run power. But then in 2023, Yandy kind of figured it out, and I think he put up 20 home runs last year, 21 home runs, something like that. He did tail off at the end of last year. I think he had like 5 home runs in the last 2 months of the season. But Garcia was very similar to that. And that's why I loved him coming into this year, because he just felt like one of those guys that was one slight tweak away from being a really good baseball player and fantasy baseball player. And I know a lot of people that weren't in the fantasy baseball industry weren't really as high on him, but I know me and some of my coworkers were very high on him coming into this year, which did make him kind of hard to draft in some leagues. But I think he's paid off so far. I don't necessarily think he's as good as he was to start the season when he had that crazy like 10 or 11 game tear to start the year. But then he's not as bad as that slump was that he had there for like 2 weeks. He's somewhere in the middle. And I think he can get to that 115 OPS plus area and level out there and just be a great. I mean, if he hits 12 home runs and steals 30 bases, he's going to score a ton of runs in Kansas City, especially hitting leadoff. So I love me some Michael Garcia. I was excited to see that he was on your list of guys that you loved coming into this year. And then I got to ask you about a pitcher from your pitchers that you loved list. The man himself, Bryan Woo. We are Woo girls on this podcast.
Whoa, thing.
We have been singing his praises for a while. So similar question to the Michael one. What was it that you saw about Woo that you liked? And in his limited run at the major league level this year so far, have you seen kind of the steps forward that you wanted to see for him to be that better pitcher?
Yeah, and the step forward particularly would be, dealing with left-handed hitting better, because he dominated righties last year and was just dreadful against lefties. I think lefties had about 1,000 OPS against him. It was pretty ridiculous. This year, he's dealt with that by just dominating both so far. I mean, he's only made, I think, 4 starts in the big leagues this year, but he has been pretty much flawless in those 4 starts. He's been getting some great results at the very least. So, if you have him in fantasy, you're happy about that. Yeah, I was excited. Last year when I did that exercise, the 5 pitchers I liked, one miscalculation I did, and I did not get good results really across the board from the previous year, was I think I put too much emphasis on a pitcher's secondaries. I looked at certain pitchers and I said, yeah, the fastball is very hittable, but they've got a great changeup and a great curveball or a great slider, and they're going to get a lot of whiffs on that. And this year I kind of went the opposite direction, and I focused on guys who I said, okay, as a baseline, I really like their fastball. I really like their fastball shape. And that's kind of the case with Woo, because his sinker in particular is, I think, one of the best sinkers that a starting pitcher in Major League Baseball throws, period. And he also has the 4-seamer, and he's throwing a fastball, I'm guessing, 60 or 65% of the time or something like that, which is very Seattle of him.
Yep.
But yeah, that's what I was, that's kind of what I saw in him. That's what I was excited about. I figured there'd probably be some, I guess this is kind of an oxymoron, but it's probably used in the fantasy world a lot. Positive regression, like he's going to regress to the mean in a way that benefits him. versus left-handed pitching, or not left-handed hitting in particular. And yeah, so I was excited about him. And also, I'll point out, I was in luckily enough to be in New York City a week ago. And I visited MLB HQ, and who was there at the same time as me, but none other than Mr.
Hey,
Bryan
now.
Wu.
That's super cool.
I wish I could have quartered him in the elevator for 30 seconds and said, "I love you." But I didn't do that. Instead, from a distance, I bathed in the greatness that is all things Bryan Wu.
That I'm jealous of that. That would be such an amazing thing to have happen. I know 2 years ago now, I had season-long credentials for the Tacoma Rainiers, and I got to go to their media day, and it was kind of rained out. And so they had us in the little training facility, and Dan Wilson was in there pitching BP to the Rainiers hitters, and the catcher of my childhood for the Seattle Mariners, Dan the Man. I was kind of awestruck just standing there like, that's really Dan Wilson. Like, I'm not going to say anything to him, but also like, that's Dan Wilson. So that was pretty amazing for me. And one point on Bryan Wu, I think I saw the stat. I can't find it right now. I've been trying to look. I think he has the best WOBA in baseball against right-handed hitters this year, like since he got called up. They just can't do a single thing against him, which is very similar to last year, but he's taken a slight step forward in that. I really wanted him to figure out a pitch to get lefties out, or like to induce some swings from lefties. So we're going to have to see. I know on the hitting side of things, you can be like a Gunnar Henderson and annihilate righties and really struggle against lefties and still be like a really good player. I'm curious to see if Wu can do the same thing on the pitching side of things and annihilate righties and struggle against lefties and find a way to be okay. I went to a game earlier this year against Oakland where Oakland stacked their lineup with lefties, and he pitched pretty good. I think it was his first game back from his rehab start. He had to get pulled because the Mariners were just too
the
good
one
in the
where he
fourth
got
inning.
pulled early. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess for him it'll be
have to
the
see.
changeup.
Mm-hmm. That could help. And I know he throws a cutter, but I think Pitching Ninja went to spring training and we're talking to him about it. And I think he said, God, what did he say? Like, Baseball Savant was recognizing it as a slider or something like that, but he's like, no, it's actually a cutter. It's not a slider. I throw a cutter. And so I would have loved if he added a slider. That would have been nice. But Bailey, it has been a ton of fun having you on here with us today. If you could give everybody a quick idea of where they can go find you at on all of your socials.
Yeah, Foolish Baseball is my main YouTube channel. If you want to see what it is that I really do most of the time, it's working on videos for that. So YouTube, Foolish Baseball. Also have that second channel, Foolish Bailey. And you can find me on the website formerly known as Twitter as well, at FoolishBB.
Everybody make sure you go follow, subscribe to his YouTube channels. I'm not kidding. The videos are amazing. He's a fun follow on X as well. I almost called it Twitter. He's a fun follow on X as well. Make sure you follow us on all of our socials. We're at Fake Baseball Pod everywhere, at Fake Baseball on X. Subscribe to the YouTube. Follow us on TikTok if you feel like it. We're everywhere right now. Hit the 5-star rating and review. Use code Fake Baseball over at Underdog, and we will catch you guys next week.